I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who counted the days since her son last called. But that's what my life slowly turned into. Days marked not by joy, but by silence. When you become a mother, no one tells you that silence can be louder than any cry. It echoes through empty rooms, sits beside you during breakfast, and follows you to bed. At first I told myself he was just busy with work, with friends, with life. After all, wasn't that what I always wanted for him? A life bigger than this small apartment, bigger than this quiet neighborhood. I used to dream of him standing tall in the world. And now he does. Only, not here, not with me. Every morning I sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the same street I've seen for 30 years. The world outside keeps moving. Children rushing to school, neighbors leaving for work. But inside everything stands still. The clock ticks, the kettle hums, the phone stays silent. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when my home was full of noise. Laughter spilling from every corner, toys scattered across the floor. His tiny voice calling, "Mom, look what I made." He used to run to me with messy hands and proud eyes, holding something he'd drawn or built from his little toy blocks. Back then, I never imagined I'd one day miss cleaning up after him. But I do. I miss the clutter. I miss the chaos that meant life was happening around me. Now the house stays tidy, and somehow that feels wrong. When he was little, I used to record his voice on a small cassette player. His giggles, his songs, his bedtime stories whispered in a half-sleep tone. He'd beg me to play them back. And he'd laugh hearing his own voice. High, innocent, full of life. Those tapes still sit in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Old and dusty, but too precious to throw away. The last time I played one, I cried before it even started. I didn't realize how much I missed that sound. That pure, unfiltered joy. When he left for college, I pretended to be excited. I packed his bags, folded his shirts with care, and tucked a small note inside one of them that said, "Don't forget to call your mom." He smiled when he found it. And for a while he did call every Sunday night. He'd tell me about his classes, his friends, the food he missed from home. I would listen, smiling at every word, filling the gaps in his stories with my imagination. His smile, his tired eyes, his busy hands. Even when the calls grew shorter, I told myself it was normal. That life was just pulling him forward as it should. But when the calls stopped completely, it felt like someone had turned off the sound of my world. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It sat on my chest and refused to move. At first, I waited by the phone every evening, thinking maybe he'd call before dinner. Then I started keeping my phone close, charging it beside me, checking it every few minutes. Sometimes, I'd even dial his number halfway, then hang up before it could ring. I didn't want to sound desperate, but I was. Days passed, then weeks, and before I knew it, months had slipped by. The calendar changed, but my hope didn't. I began keeping track, not of birthdays or holidays, but of the days since his last call. I wrote them on the small notepad beside my bed. Day 1, he's probably busy. Day 7, maybe he's traveling. Day 20, he'll call when things settle. Day 50, maybe he's forgotten. I stopped writing after that. Not because I stopped hoping, but because counting made the silence louder. One afternoon, I was watering the plants on my balcony, when I saw a little boy down the street, holding his mother's hand. He was chattering away about something, his words tumbling over each other like marbles. The mother smiled, nodding at every sentence, not because she understood everything, but because she loved hearing his voice. I watched them until they turned the corner, and suddenly I missed my son's voice so much. Hurt to breathe. That evening I made his favorite dish. Macaroni and cheese the way he liked it, with too much butter and a sprinkle of paprika on top. Felt silly cooking for one, but I wanted to feel close to him again. I set the table for 2 out of habit, and when I sat down I looked at the empty chair across from me. It stared back silently, and I whispered, "Dinner's ready, sweetheart." The words hung in the air for a long time before fading away. And for the first time in years, I realized how long it had been since someone answered. I still keep his room the same. His posters, his books, even the old sweater he left behind. Sometimes I open the door just to breathe in the faint smell that still lingers. It's faded now, but it's enough to bring back 1,000 memories. His laughter, his teenage arguments, the late-night talks we used to have when he couldn't sleep. I thought time would make it easier. But time doesn't heal everything. Just teaches you how to live with the ache. And so I sit here day after day, counting not the hours, but the silences between them. The older I get, the more the past feels like a place I visit instead of a memory I hold. It's like walking down an old street where every house whispers something you used to know. Some memories still smile at me. Others, I often find myself standing by his bedroom door, hand resting on the frame just looking inside. The posters on his wall are fading. A football team, a movie he loved, a map with red pins where he dreamed of traveling. I never took any of it down. I suppose I was waiting for the day he'd come back and notice. The day he'd laugh and say, "Mom, you really kept all this." He was a kind boy, stubborn, yes, but kind in the way that made you proud even when he didn't say much. When he was in high school, he'd stay up late studying, and I'd peek into his room, pretending I needed something. He'd roll his eyes and say, "Mom, I'm fine, stop checking every 5 minutes." But I'd still bring him a glass of milk, because love always finds excuses to stay close. I remember one winter morning. He missed his bus because he overslept. He came running out half-dressed, trying to tie his shoelaces. He was angry, blaming me for not waking him up. I scolded him, he yelled back. And we didn't speak for the rest of the day. That evening, he came home quietly, slid a small paper under my door that said, "Sorry, Mom. I love you." I still have that note, tucked inside my wallet, soft and yellow from years of being held. It reminds me how love survives even in silence. As he grew older, he began to drift. Not in a cruel way. Just in that quiet, natural way life teaches children to outgrow their parents' shadow. He wanted space, freedom. And I wanted to protect him from everything. We both loved each other. Just not always at the same time. When he got his first job, he was so proud. He came home with that smile I hadn't seen in years, telling me how his boss liked his ideas. We sat on the balcony that night, drinking tea, watching the city lights flicker below. He said, "Mom, this is just the start." And I believed him. I was so proud. But somewhere deep down I felt something else too. The quiet fear that every mother knows. That success would take him further away. And it did. His visits grew fewer, our calls shorter, until eventually there were no visits. And the calls stopped altogether. It's strange. You never know which goodbye will be the last one that truly matters. After he moved to another city, I used to write him letters. Not emails, real letters. The kind you hold in your hands, where you can still smell the ink. I'd write about small things. The garden, the weather, the new neighbors, the stray cat that visits my balcony. Sometimes I'd slip in a photo of the house, as if that would remind him where he came from. But he never replied. Not once. I told myself maybe he was too busy. Or maybe he preferred the convenience of texts and emails. But months passed, and not a single word came back. Still I kept writing. I have a whole box of them now. Letters he never read. They sit under my bed, tied together with a red ribbon. Each one holds a piece of me I never got to give. Sometimes, when the nights stretch too long, I take one out and read it aloud. It feels like I'm talking to him. Like maybe he's listening somewhere. Maybe he can hear my voice through the quiet corners of the world. One letter began with, "Dear son, today the jasmine bloomed again. I thought of how you used to pick them for me. Your hand's too small to hold them all." Another said, "I made your favorite pie today. Turned out just the way you liked it. Sweet and a little burnt on the edges." They sound silly now. But writing them made me feel alive. Because when words are all you have left, you cling to them like oxygen. I once tried to call him after months of silence. It rang twice. And then a woman's voice answered. She said, "Hello." Froze. It must have been his wife. I'd heard he got married. But he never told me himself. I wanted to say something, anything. But the words just wouldn't come. So I hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time, feeling 1,000 things I couldn't name. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote another letter. But this one I didn't put in the box. I burned it. The smoke curled up like a prayer. A quiet goodbye I wasn't ready to say out loud. People tell me to move on, to find hobbies, make friends, join clubs where old women drink tea and talk about the past. I smile and nod. But what they don't understand is, when you've built your whole world around someone, you can't just move on. You can only learn to live in the ruins of what once felt full. Still I try. Every day I try. I water the plants, I watch the rain. I whisper his name softly into the air, just to hear how it sounds. Sometimes I imagine what I'd say if he did call. I rehearse it in my head. I'd tell him I'm fine, that he doesn't have to worry. I'd ask about his work, his life, his wife. I'd tell him I'm proud of him. So proud. And then, maybe, I'd finally say the thing I've been holding inside all these years. I just miss you. That's all. But the call never comes. And so I keep the words safe, like treasures no one else can see. Every night before I sleep, I touch the photo of him on my bedside table. He's smiling, carefree, full of dreams. I whisper, "Good night, my boy." And even though there's no reply, I still wait for a moment, just in case. The older I grow, the quieter my days become. The clock still ticks, the birds still sing. But the world feels softer, like it's speaking in whispers instead of words. I've learned that loneliness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes it sits beside you, like an old friend who doesn't need to speak. The mornings are my favorite now. I make tea for one, sit by the window, and watch the sunlight creep across the floor. There's peace in this routine, a kind of acceptance that only comes after years of waiting. I used to mark the days since his last call on the calendar. Now I just let them pass. Not because I've stopped missing him, but because missing him has become part of who I am. One afternoon, as I was cleaning the shelves, I found a box of his childhood things. A small blue toy car, his kindergarten drawings, a birthday card that said, "To the best mom in the world." I sat on the floor, holding them one by one. Each item felt like a heartbeat from another lifetime. I smiled through tears, because even though time has taken so much, it hasn't taken the love. That part never fades. That evening it rained. The kind of soft, steady rain that makes the world feel smaller. As if everything you've ever lost might somehow find its way back. I made tea, opened the window, and let the wind fill the room with the smell of wet earth. And then, for no reason at all, I spoke out loud. "Wherever you are, my son, I hope you're happy." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even sadness anymore. Just a quiet truth. Because love, real love, isn't about being remembered. It's about hoping the person you love is okay, even if you never hear from them again. That night I dreamt of him. He was young again, running through the garden calling my name. When I opened my arms, he ran straight into them. It felt real. So real that when I woke up, I could still feel the warmth of his little hands. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel empty. I felt full. Full of everything he once gave me. Full of memories that would never leave. A few days later, the mailman slipped an envelope under my door. It was small and plain, with handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a card, a photograph of a young family, him, his wife, and a baby girl in his arms. On the back, just one line was written. "Mom, I thought you'd like to meet your granddaughter." I stared at it for a long, trembling moment. Then I pressed it to my chest. And for the first time in years, I cried, not out of pain, but out of relief. He hadn't forgotten me. He never really had. Sometimes love just gets lost in the noise of living. But it always finds its way back, even if it takes a lifetime. That night, I placed the photograph beside his old one. Two versions of him side by side. The boy I raised and the man he became. I lit a small candle and whispered the same words I said every night. "Good night, my boy." Only this time I added softly, "And thank you for remembering." The flame flickered gently, casting a warm glow over both pictures. And in that golden light, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. Felt peaceful, like the end of a long story. The kind that breaks your heart just enough to make it whole again. Sometimes the people we love don't stay close. But love doesn't vanish. It changes shape, waits quietly, and returns in ways we least expect. Because even in silence, love remembers.